Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Continuing from last session, we're going to talk about niyamas, which is one of the 8 limbs from Yoga Sutras. And we talk about Yoga Sutras and yoga philosophy based on Patanjali's book. There's many books that talk about yoga philosophy. This is the one that I study in my teacher training, and it's the one that I keep studying. It's quite well known, but there is obviously many other books. And we've only been really touching lightly on what yoga is and what it is to study yoga and practice yoga. And in the last few sessions, we've gone through the 8 limbs of yoga. 8 limbs of yoga is just little tools and a structure for us to practice, to give us some guidance in terms of learning yoga, in terms of practicing yoga. The main objective, the main purpose of practicing yoga is to stop the fluctuations of the mind. So there is the sutra number 2 in the book that says Chitra Vitri Nirodha, which is yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. And the whole work we do, which is a lot, you can say a lot, between yoga poses, pranayamas, meditation, kriyas, and we only actually, for those of you that come to class and so on, we only actually touch on a tiny little bit of yoga, because there's many different practices of yoga. There is obviously the physical practice of yoga, but inside of the physical practice of yoga, we have vinyasa, ashtanga, iyengar, yin yoga, so many other styles of yoga. And then in terms of other practices that involve mantra singing, there is tantra yoga, there is many other practices. We also have karma yoga, which is a selfless dedication to serve others. So really, what we spoke about, what we speak in these sessions is just a tiny little bit. And what we know as yoga practitioners from the physical side of it, from the part of pranayama and meditation, is a very tiny little bit of it. As you delve more into yoga, as you start to learn more into yoga, you probably might start to be drawn to other practices. So there is certain yoga teachers that have been studying yoga for 20, 30, 40 years and are more drawn to the pranayama, the power of the breathing, all the different types of breathing techniques that we can do, all the different types of kriyas, which is detoxification, cleansing practices, all the different things that we can do with the breath. And they specialize and work more and teach more about that. Other teachers teach more just the physical practice, which is asana. Other teachers teach a lot the philosophy that also Bhagavad Gita, which is another ancient book, very well known as well. So teachers, they share the learnings from these ancient scriptures, where it talks about overcoming the challenges. And in the case of Bhagavad Gita is a story between a nephew that has to fight, and this fight is illusion, but it's the story, has to fight against the family. And then there's all this tale and all this story, and there is Krishna, which is, let's say, the friend that comes and helps the nephew to kind of overcome all the challenges. And then you have other teachers that go more, or students that are drawn to mantra singing. And you've probably heard about kirtan. We had a few sessions of kirtan in the studio, where you sing a mantra over and over again, and that is your practice. So instead of doing down dogs and crescent lunge and warrior ones and warrior twos, of course you do some physical practice, but your main practice is mantra singing as a way of purifying your body, purifying your mind, finding peace, finding healthier lifestyles, and so on. And then there is other teachers that are more drawn to meditation, and meditation in yoga philosophy comes from the background of Tibetan Buddhism meditation, which is focusing on the breath, focusing um, on the stillness, on the presence of the body. Having said that, even a yoga practice, a movement between poses, a mantra singing can be a form of meditation, because if you're fully present in what you're doing, if you're fully present with your pranayama, whether you're doing Kapalabhati or just a normal breathing, it is a form of meditation. So yoga meditation has influences from Tibetan meditation, Buddhist meditation, because it's very much based on the present moment. And yes, you do have other forms of meditation like transcendental meditation and so many others. I can't remember now. And they are obviously great meditations, but they don't come from the yoga background. But they all have the same purpose, the same objective. So yoga has all this spectrum of a million of tools to help us to find what they call enlightenment, samadhi. And enlightenment is just to bring light to the areas where we see only darkness, light into the areas that we don't see anything, we kind of don't even know they exist. Enlightenment and transcending the attachment to the body, and transcending attachment to the ego, and transcending attachment to the I, this persona, this identity that we created through life. And we have all these tools. The 8 limbs is one of them. So the past few sessions we looked into the yamas, which is the social discipline, where we looked into ahimsa, the practice of non-violence. And here we're not just talking about physical non-violence, we're talking about verbal non-violence towards the others, actions, thoughts that are aggressive towards others. We covered satya, which is speaking our truth, that it is very related to our throat chakra, vishuddha, where we are able to generate the energies to speak our truth, to be able to say what we feel in a way that it's true, but it's not going to hurt others. Again, connection with ahimsa, non-violence, and speaking the truth. And then we have asteya, which is non-stealing, obviously not stealing other people's things, but also not stealing other people's energy. Very often, and especially in the world where we live today, we somehow are so enveloped, we are in this tornado of emotions, into our dramas, into our suffering, into our conflicts, into our challenges, that we end up bringing other people into this storm, into this tornado of emotions. And asteya is also not stealing other people's energy to come into this storm, in this tornado that we are living in. Brahmacharya, which is non-excess in terms of food, in terms of alcohol, in terms of work, in terms of sleeping, in terms of wanting too much to be with someone, all these things that we sometimes end up consuming too much. And then we have aparigraha, which is non-attachment. So we start to learn how to not look for attachment to external things for our happiness. And usually when I teach the beginner's workshop, this is one of the areas I cover very briefly. When we start to be awakened, when we transcend, when we get some enlightenment, it doesn't always have to be this kind of crazy thing where we see lights, where we suddenly become this completely different person and want to go and live in in the cave or somewhere in India and, you know, be with a bed sheet and no shoes, no food, no wallets, no money, nothing. It doesn't have to be like that. The awakening, the enlightenment can happen exactly in these little things. From the moment that you suddenly have a heightened sense of awareness in what you do, what you speak, your actions, you start to suddenly realize you are very aggressive when you speak to people. And I'm going to give you some more examples of things that happened to me. I think this will be more helpful. When I started doing the work, and, you know, mainly happened when I had my depression and I was completely out for quite a few months. And then when I went back into constructing my life again and, you know, finding healing, I started working a lot more with yoga and also did a few CBT courses, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy and so on, and all of that helped. And what happened during that process is that I started realizing how aggressive I was. So again, I was practicing the opposite of ahimsa. I was very aggressive in terms of words and in terms of expressions and in terms of gestural communication towards people around me. And that aggressivity also then would translate in being defensive every time would speak to me. So when I started doing the work, I started realizing, wow, I am so all the time like so aggressive speaking to people, and I could see myself even being defensive as well. Someone probably would just come to me to speak about something, say something, and I would be already with my guns in my hand, like ready to fight if I needed. And then the other kind of awakening, enlightenment that you start to get is when you realize that whatever, everything that you have, either in your room or in your house or work, you're happy with it. You stop craving for more clothes or more shoes or a better job position or more friends to be happy. And this was also something that as I progressed into my yoga practice, I started noticing that I was not so drawn to going out and taking drugs to feel happy. I was happy to stay at home and do nothing. I was not so drawn to buy all the time some shoes or some clothes to make me feel good about my image. So enlightenment and awakening can be these little things that you start to awake towards yourself. Another one that I had, which was quite strong, and I always share this story, is I used to work in hotels, and we used to have obviously a canteen to go and eat. And I've since about that time, and I think around there I was probably already 32 years old or something like that, I struggled with emotional eating. So I would either overeat a lot, and that could be anything from chocolates to a big loaf of bread with butter, or just eat big quantities of salad, like a huge salad bowl with everything on it, or, you know, a huge pasta plate, whatever it is. But then I would also very easily not eat for a day, or I would then go and run for 3 hours to kill, you know, the calories that I've just consumed or something like that. And as I was in that process of healing and awareness and wanting to make a change, I've noticed one day in the hotel when I went for lunch, and all these things, you know, you have a buffet, so you can take as much as you want. And sometimes in the hotels, you feel very drained because it's an environment with a lot of people around, and you're standing all the time, and you're in high heels, and you have to, you know, to keep this figure all the time smiling and so on. So when you go to lunch, you're like drained of energy. So very often the wanting to overeat because you're tired physically is there a lot. It happens to a lot of people, and it's very common that we tend to put on weight when we start to work in certain environments. Hotels is one of them, hospitals is another one, restaurants is another one. Certain environments where you're drained physically and mentally, it's very propitious to that. So anyway, so I get to the canteen and I have this urge of just eating a lot, filling up my plate with a lot of food, like I've done many times. And I think I've shared a bit of that story here as well. But on that moment, I just had this moment of space, you know, that space that we talk about in meditation, that space where you see yourself thinking about, I want to eat everything, I want to stuff myself with food because I'm tired. And then it's like, no, I don't want to do that because, first of all, I'm not that hungry. I don't need to eat that much. Plus, it's not good food. And plus, this is not really what's going to make me feel energized. It's just going to make me more tired. So you have this little, it's like milliseconds, you know, it's a very quick thing, but you have that space where you have some clarity. And on that day, I decided, no, I am not going to be a compulsive eater. I am not going to be an emotional eater. I'm just going to eat something normal, something that will fulfill my body. And then that's it. And I'm going to be happy. And this moment of clarity has changed a lot my eating habits from that moment. And this happened many times in my life. It happened when I moved to the UK, first time. When I felt claustrophobic in Portugal. It happened when I stopped taking drugs. It happened when I stopped online dating that was making me suffering a lot, and I was going through bad times. So pretty much in every area of my life. And I'm sure you relate to a lot of these things because it is true. At some point, you get to a certain stage where you have clarity. And when does it happen? Well, it happens when you start to do the work. And sometimes, for me, it took me years. You know, I had my depression when I was 32 or 33, something around that time. Or 34, Ian, because it was just before I met Ian. So I was 35 when I met Ian. So yeah, around that time. So it took me 30 something years to do all the crazy things that I had to do. I had just started yoga, proper yoga, regularly. I was really dedicated, committed to it. Started to do some meditation, but I couldn't really get it. It was very frustrating at the time. I started only doing the work around that age. And sometimes I feel like yoga actually made all the things that I had bottled up and all the things that I was hiding with drugs and hiding with the positive personality and so on. Yoga made everything come up so that I had to deal with it. And then I found a way of healing and clarity and all of that. So yeah, I was talking about aparigraha, which is non-attachment. So you start to have these awakening moments where you realize that coming to practice yoga in the studio or via a live class or a video class is better for you than to go out for a drink with your friends. Maybe you had a bad day at work and that's what you want to do. You want to go for a drink. But suddenly you realize, actually, no, I'm going to do a yoga class because that's better for me. Or you really want to watch a movie until late hours at night, but you then say to yourself, actually, go to sleep. It's better for me than to watch the movie until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So this awakening, little enlightenment things will happen to you as soon as you start doing the work. Sometimes it's already happening before, but we are not aware. We are not awake enough to notice. And I'm sure it does, but we are not awake. We don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't notice, we are not present to it. So then we have the niyamas. Niyamas is all about personal discipline. Niyamas means restraint, not giving in. And this is where we look at sosha, which is cleanliness, purification. And it's the purification of the thoughts, of the mind, through our words, through our actions. And here what we want to find is, through this practice of understanding that we don't need the things from outside to make us happy, that we don't need to be violent towards the others to get what we need, or to have a conversation with people, that we can speak our truth and no one is gonna dislike us or kill us for that. Once we start to get into this understanding from the yamas, we start to purify the mind. The mind starts to be more clear, more pure, because the mind is this box full of ideas, concepts, judgments, educations, images, impressions, all these things that we learn during our life, that comes from different environments, from family, from school, from TV, from outside, from all areas. And we then come to this place where the mind starts to get impure because there's too much information saying too many things that don't correspond to the reality. They're just information that we absorbed at some point in our life, and we were not able to digest in a way that we can say, this serves me, this does not serve me. This is pure, this is impure. This is good, this is bad. And a very good example is when we grow, when we are kids and we start growing, when we are about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, we haven't developed all our intellects. We haven't developed our common sense. You know, when we are teenagers, when we are like 18, 19 years old, we do sometimes so many stupid things because we haven't developed the common sense part of the brain. And as kids, when we're 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, we still haven't developed a lot of those things. So what happens is that we receive all this information from the outside world, from different people, from different situations, from friends in school, from teachers, from all of that. But we don't know how to digest. We just absorb because we are sponges. We are in that learning and development stage. So we just absorb. And when we absorb exactly as they are. We don't have the ability to then judge, well, okay, yeah, my friend at school called me ugly, but I know I'm not ugly, so I'm fine. No, we don't have that. The kids at school, if they call us ugly, we have no judgmental or ability to understand why they are calling us ugly, and we just think we are ugly. And because everyone says that being ugly is bad, then I am bad because I am ugly. So this is a very brief kind of explanation on how our mind becomes impure. It's through many different ways, and it starts from the moment we are born. So with the practice, yoga, yamas, niyamas, we start to realize these impurities in terms of our physical body first. So we start to accept ourselves the way we are, fat, not fat, big, not big, tall, short, with 3 eyes or just 1 eye, you know, whatever body was given to you, you accept yourself. And once you start to understand this body that you have, your mind starts to get purified. So that's socha. And we've covered it last week, but it's always good to review a little bit. Socha is this purification of the mind when you understand that your body is as pure as it is, and that's it. You don't have to be a model of, I don't know how many meters tall and I don't know what clothing size to be beautiful or to be a perfect human being. Then we have santosha. Santosha is contentment. And contentment is one of those words that, whilst is known to everyone, it's probably one of the words that it's most difficult to experience. Contentment is that stage of equanimity, that stage of neutrality, where you are not either very happy, not very sad, you're just okay. Where you don't like or you don't dislike, you're just okay. And sometimes this happens in certain situations where someone asks for your opinion about something and you don't have an opinion. Don't know, maybe it's politics, maybe it is about some movie or a book, and you just don't have an opinion. There is no words, you don't like it, you don't dislike it. And with the yoga and the purifications of the mind, we start to get more into this equanimity, into this neutral state, which is also called the sattva. Sattva is balance. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the three gunas. As human beings, as personalities, we either are in Raja, which is lots of energy, talk a lot, always on the go, and really high, extroverted, and so on. And then we have Tamas. Tamas is the personality that procrastinates, is slow, likes to slow down, is a bit more shy, and so on. And then Sattva is the more balanced one. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it explains that we need the three. We need Raja so that we wake up in the morning and get moving and get to do things and move with our lives and get stuff done. Tamas is the sleeping, is when we are tired and we need to sleep. So we do have tamas because sometimes we do need to rest and sleep and slow down and hold on and so on. And then we have sattva, which is a more balanced state. So very often in the Western world, in today's society, most likely everywhere in the world at the moment, we are either in Raja or either in Tamas. It's very rare that we find ourselves living more in Sattva. Most of our personalities are either too out there, always on the go. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Let me do it, this and that, I can't stay still. I can't have nothing to do. Give me a list of 50 things to do, even though I know I'm not going to do even half of them. And then there's tamas, which is those that are like, oh, I really want to do this, I really want to do that, but I don't know how, and I can't. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I can't. Oh, no, I'm going to stay in bed a little bit more. And, oh, no, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to create conflict. Oh, it's better if I just stay in my little corner and don't bother anyone. So most people are in these two extremes. And then with the practices of yoga, we start to come into sattva. And sattva is very similar to contentment because you are in that place of not jumping, oh, I'm so happy, so excited, and then, oh, I'm so depressed, oh, I'm so bored, oh, I don't like this. Contentment is to find that place where we are happy where we are. Well, it's not even happy. You're not even happy or unhappy. You're just okay. The next one, the next niyama is tapa. And I spoke about this in the class this morning. Tapa means to burn. And it is, according to yoga philosophy, it is through burning that we overcome and we get things done. So tapas is the austerity, is the self-discipline that we get ourselves into in order to overcome the challenges. So fire, which is related to the tapa because it's about burning, fire is the transformational energy. So when we spoke about the solar plexus chakra in the meditations, we talk about the element being fire. Because fire in the solar plexus, it's what gives us the will to go in the direction we want to go. The will, the power to achieve what we want to achieve. The will, the power to go and find a new job. The will, the power to go and do shopping. All of those things. Fire transforms wood into heat. Fire transforms food into energy. Fire transforms your dedication, your kind of obsession by something into an action. And I'm just looking at Krupa, and the Krupa is knitting, which obviously she had a desire or a fire, let's say, to do something to help her through this moment of lockdown. So the fire helped her to go and start knitting. So these kind of examples are generated through your tapa. When we go through this process of awakening, purification, and so on, there will be a lot of fire in the body. One of them you feel when you're practicing. Your muscles burning, your muscles aching, you're hot, you're tired, you're like, oh my God, this is such a long class. You know, all of this fire, all of this, oh, my muscle is shaking, you know, all of this is tapa. But we have to go through that in order to allow transformation, because fire is the transformational energy. Then we have the mental tapa, which is when we are doing meditation. We're sitting in meditation and it's like the thoughts going everywhere, the body getting tired, the pain here, the pain there, the itchiness there, like, oh, it's only been 5 minutes. I feel like I've been here for half an hour, you know, that fire, that anxiety, that tapas in us to help us overcome the challenge of sitting still in presence. And then we have the verbal tapas, which is through our communication, through the way we speak to others, but to ourselves as well in thoughts. In the beginning, we say all the nasty things. We say all the crappy things. You want to let it out. You write it down, something that happened to you, you journal it, and this and that and F and this, blah, 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 you know, all of that thing. And you burn all that fire out to purify the verbal side. So tapa is to transform, is this fire that creates the challenge, creates the intensity, but on the other side, you have liberation and freedom. We then have svadhyaya, which is self-study. Self-study that sometimes is also called spiritual study, because spirituality is about the self. It's not, when we talk about spirituality in yoga, we are not talking about God from Catholicism or, you know, religion. We're not talking about those kind of religious things or those gods, but we're talking about a soul, a spirit that lives inside of us that we don't see, but we know it exists. We all have our little sixth sense, isn't it? A little sixth sense, you know, our little intuition. And that's part of the soul. We don't see the intuition. We don't see the love that we feel for others. We don't see that we have energy in our body, but we feel it. So the spirituality in yoga world is about the inner self, this soul, this God, sometimes is used the word God, this being, this higher self that we have within us. And it is through the regular practice that we then start to become and start to study the self. What does this mean is, the more you practice yoga, the more you start to study about yourself. So you go like, okay, I've been doing half pigeon for 6 months now. Yeah, it feels still a little bit cranky and so on, challenging, but I feel like I'm getting somewhere. And, you know, all of these self-inquiry or introspective, it is a way of studying the self. You go through meditation. You sit for meditation every day, 10 minutes religiously, regardless whether it is very agitated, if you fall asleep or you don't fall asleep. After a while of doing the same thing over and over again, you start to become the subject of the study. Yeah, so you study about yourself. You start to go, like at the end of the meditation, you start to feel like, oh, today I felt like this. My breath was like that. I could feel the energy around me. I could feel in peace. Or you feel the effects after the meditation or during the day, and you start to study the self. So Svadhyaya is through the practice of yoga, you are studying your own self. And we can see this a lot when we talked about the yamas, where we look at about ahimsa, non-violence, satya, truthfulness, brahmacharya, non-excess, aparigraha, non-attachment. When you are doing these things, you are being aware of what you're doing, you're studying your own self. You bring awareness to how you are reacting, how you are speaking, what are you thinking. Then we have Isvara Pranidaha. Isvara Pranidaha is surrendering. And this is one that I find more difficult to explain because it doesn't really have any practical kind of examples. Again, it's one of those things you don't see, and intellectually you can't really grasp it. You have to experience it. It's a bit like a lot of the things that happen in yoga. You know, sometimes some friends might ask you, like, you know, why do you like yoga so much? You know, or you might want to just share why you like yoga so much. And there are no words that can describe, you know, there are no words that can describe how you feel when you leave the class. You might say, oh, you know, I feel very relaxed, I feel really zen, I have a really good night's sleep every time I leave class, or I feel really light, or I feel really energized. Whatever words you put into it, they never really explain clearly how you feel. And this is the same thing with many things in yoga. It has to be actually the whole yoga. It is experiential. You do need to go through it to understand it. And the surrender is the same thing. You come to a place where you surrender yourself to be studying your own self, surrender yourself to feel the pain, whatever is going through in your life. You surrender yourself to be imperfect. You surrender yourself for not always being right. You surrender yourself for not wanting to tell someone else off. There's so many situations in life where we're going to say, I'm going to surrender and I'm going to be. And some of these examples that I gave are quite practical. You know, many of us have the need to be right, the need to complain, the need to please others, the need to, what examples can I give you? I can't remember now. And sometimes the surrendering comes when we have this urge of wanting to speak over someone else because that's how we've been used to live. And we just realize, actually, I'm not going to speak over this person. I'm going to let this person speak. And more so, I'm not going to say anything at the end. Or someone is saying, this should be like this, you should do like that, and like this, and like that, because I know it, because Anna. And your normal and your pattern is to say, no, I am the one that is right, but instead you go, I surrender, and I am not going to be on my pattern, which is prove myself right to someone. I surrender to this place of equanimity, neutrality. Complaining, excuses as well. Lots of us very often find excuses for many things, and excuses for not doing what we need to do, excuses for not sticking to a certain healthy lifestyle, excuses for not going and seeing people that we should see or call family, and so on. And when we see ourselves finding those excuses, we should surrender to the natural self, to the equanimity, rather than going into the impurities of the mind, which is more excuses, more excuses, more excuses, more excuses, or more complaints. That was Isvara Parigraha. These are the niyamas, social, personal discipline. After that, it's easier to explain, but more difficult to practice. After that is asana. Asana is the yoga postures. The yoga postures is all about practicing. The more yoga postures you do, the better you get at it, the more your body opens to it, the more your mind is able to overcome the challenges. You know, this morning in class, we were doing a pose that was quite intense in many respects. And I know from my own experience that when we do that pose, the first thing that pops into my mind is, I can't do this pose, my hamstrings are not open enough, and my wrist is hurting, you know, all of that thing. And we don't even stay there for a breath, and we just want to come out of the pose. And the thing that it is echoing in our head is, why my body is so crap, why am I so crap, why can't I just stretch my leg, why can't I just do that, what the hell, you know, we go through all these. And what I was teaching in class today was, okay, stay there, let the voice talk, let the things come up, let the impurities of the mind come up, saying all the things, all the verbal diarrhea that needs to say, but stay there and breathe. And then see if you can just stay wherever you are, breathing, and be happy, content, aparigraha, with what you have, non-attachment. Santosha, aparigraha, non-attachment, content. Santosha, contentment, aparigraha, non-attachment. And that's why asanas, yoga postures, are a place for self-study, a place for svadhyaya. Because it's here when we go through the challenges, through the tapa, the burning sensation of the posture, that the impurities of the mind come, that we then can breathe into it and practice our aparigraha and santosha. Non-attachment, contentment. We then have the fourth limb, which is pranayama, breathing. Breathing is energy. We call it pranavayu. Let me put my thing charging because I think my battery, and I'm overrunning. I need to finish soon. Let me just put it charging. There we go. Charging. Okay. The fourth limb, pranayama. Pranayama is breathing exercises. In yoga, we have a prana body. Prana body is energy body. The whole body, from tips of the toes, crown of the head, is full of energy, an energy current that flows through the body. Our brain is communicating between neurons through electrical signals. And not only that, it has been proven, and there is a scientific studies on that, that the magnetic field of our heart reaches 3 meters. The energy of our body reaches more than 1 meter. So if we consider that the energy inside of our body is very powerful to create, to detox, to heal, we start to heal from within. And this is what yoga teaches us. It's not about finding what is outside of us that can heal us. It's about finding inside of us the healing. It's not about going outside and getting a pill to fix how we feel inside, but it's about finding the healing from within. And sages in yoga have been studying this for 5,000, 10,000 years old. Some people say 10,000, some people say 5,000. And they have found that it is through these inner energies that we find the healing. So when we practice yoga, the yoga poses, we are promoting the internal healing. When we do the pranayamas, the breathing exercises, we are promoting internal healing. Pranayamas is kriyas. Kriyas is detoxing, healing practices, and pranayamas is just another one. And there's many different pranayamas. We did a lot during our chakra balancing meditations, and we do a lot in class as well. We then have pratyahara. Pratyahara is sitting still. And you don't have to be in a cross-legged meditation posture for that. You can be sitting in your car, you can be sitting while you're having breakfast, and just have a little moment of pratyahara. And the best example to understand pratyahara is this. You are sitting, and then you start to have all these thoughts and all these images going by, flowing through down the river. And suddenly you jump into the river, get all messed up, get wet and so on, bump into a rock, all of that. And this is all your thoughts and your impressions and your images and all these things that sometimes we can't even understand and don't have a clarity. And then that's it, you're all mixed up. But pratyahara is you jump outside and you sit at the banks of the river and you just see the thoughts and the images passing by. Very similar to meditation, when we keep the presence in the breath and we don't get attached and get rambled on in our thoughts. But pratyahara has the purifying effect of us to see what is going on in our life or in our head from an outside perspective, from a bigger picture. It's almost like it's your friend that it is in that little river or in the very agitated river with all the challenges, with all confusion, and you can see the things from the outside, from a different perspective. And it's saying to your friend, look, maybe things are not exactly like that. Maybe you're feeling like this or like that because you are in the river drowning with water and hitting your head into the... Maybe just jump outside so that you can see that the river is actually not that harmful. So this is pratyahara. And then we have dharana. Dharana is consistent focus. When we are able to focus in one object alone for long periods of time, and that is a breath, is a candle flame, is whatever you want to use it as your meditation practice. Dhyana is long periods of focus, when you are able to stay minutes or hours or, you know, some people days, where you're just focusing on your breath, where nothing distracts you. There's no thoughts that come and distract you. There is no noise that distracts you. There is nothing. And for most of us, especially if you've been doing meditation for quite a while, you can do that maybe for a few minutes. I can tell you, I've been meditating now we are in 2020, for about 6 years, very consistently. And I can do that for a few minutes. 1 hour, no way. I'm still, still working on it. But it is a long process. And, you know, it's not about achieving that. It's about all the benefits that come with it as well. And then we have samadhi. Samadhi, which is enlightenment, is the transcendence. So Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras explains that doing all these tools, purifying the mind, being aware of the way we speak, being aware of how attached we are to a mobile phone or to a car, being aware of all of that starts our progress into liberation from suffering, liberation from this attachment we have to the body, to this life in the earth. And that's it. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It was great to have you here all these weeks. Namaste. Have a great evening.